Hey, everybody, welcome to the Drunk Turkey Show for the first episode. My name is Daniel J. These are my two homies, Big Blue and Jeemers, aka Jaime G. We're just three homies that have hung out together pretty much our entire lives and like to talk about conspiracies, movies, and current topics. We thought we'd put it on the show for you guys. Again, my name is Daniel J. I'm guessing it's going to be y'all's left, is going to be Big Blue. He's our expert in medical advice and whatnot. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Blue.
I am Big Blue, and I do work in the medical field. I've been in the medical field for about 15 years. So, yeah, it's been a while, man.
Nice. So whenever we have any questions about, medical stuff, like, hey, would this really happen in real life? Like, for instance, like we'll begin talking to later. Can somebody actually go through a 3-hour podcast with a migraine? And so we'll be answering those questions. And then, excuse me. And below me is a man that needs no introduction. He is known as the ufologist for the stars. He is our expert in psychokinesis and very well recognized and very highly respected in the Bigfoot community, Mr. Jeemers. Tell us a little bit something about yourself.
Only respected because I'm as tall as one of them.
Hey, if you get in, you get in. Everybody's been trying to find one. Today, what we wanted to talk about and kind of go into is Bob Lazar. He's the granddaddy or godfather of ufology when it comes to flying saucers and Area 51 in particular. He's who you think of or comes to mind first, especially for me. A little bit about him, and before we get into it, he was the gentleman that came out in the late 80s, early 90s with George Knapp, and basically exposed Area 51. Talked about his time working in a subsection of Area 51 called the S4 that was about 10-15 miles south of Area 51. Talked about how he was directly involved in reverse engineering his alien spacecrafts that were found. There's a lot of different topics on him. A lot of different people think, yeah, he's lying. I'm on the fence. I'm not sure. And I'm hoping maybe today, after talking out with these two guys, maybe we can kind of, figure it out. Is he lying or is he not? And so, again, Jaime, or Jeemers, what is it that you think about Bob Lazar? What comes to mind when you think Bob?
When I first heard the story about it, it was out there, man. It was out there. You wouldn't be able to tell if he was lying unless you actually saw him on video talking about it, consistently talking about it. And, after so many years, it's pretty much the same story from the beginning. Like, I mean, of course, you're going to forget some stuff over the years, especially from 20, 30 years ago, of course. But right. From what I figured is like it's the same consistent story time after time. But
right. So his consistency kind of leads to him being what's the word I'm looking for? Credible.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Right. So but when he came, when did you first hear about Bob Lazar? Like, was it because we were fairly young when he came out? 1989 is when he came out and told the story. So we were fairly young.
Yeah, we're like 2 years old.
Yeah. When did it first? When did you first hear about Bob?
Man, it was probably the early 2000s when I heard about it, but didn't pay too much attention to it until recently. You know what I mean?
Right. What about you, Blue? Did you hear about Bob Lazar early on, or was he somebody that is recent to you?
No, I mean I've heard of him a long time ago, but I didn't put too much into it. But I do watch Joe Rogan, so I saw him on Joe Rogan. So that's very kind of.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's podcast kind of opens up a lot of people to Bob, and so your first introduction was during his podcast.
Yeah.
Now, being that you're in the medical field, did you find him to be credible, given the fact that he said he had a migraine? Do you know too many people that can go through a podcast with a migraine?
I mean, it'd be tough, man. Like most people with migraines, you'll see them like want the lights dim. You'll see them like grabbing their head every once in a while because they're having a headache, and it's a real bad headache if you call it a migraine. It's not just a headache. It's a headache, then you can get a tension headache, and then the migraine's a little bit higher than that.
Mhm.
You know, if you had a migraine, when I saw the videos, it looked pretty lit up in there. You know, it wasn't like they were in a dark room.
Very much so. That's
It
true.
wasn't complaining. I
That's
mean,
true.
but and
He
for
was
three
on there
hours,
for a while.
for 3 hours, that's quite a bit of time to be there with a headache and not ask like for a break or see him pop some Tylenols or something.
Yeah, yeah. That was very very impressive of him. If he did have a migraine, if not, then it may lead to some questions. And I think that the parts that where he complained about the most was when he was pressed or asked about element 115. And so to go back a little bit back into his backstory, um, Bob Lazar basically was a what was his position?
Physicist.
Yeah, correct,
Physicist.
correct. Yeah, he was a physicist who worked at Los Alamos, and he created or he put a jet engine in the back of his Honda, right? And basically,
There's a dot.
Ed Teller, who is like the guy that created or invented the hydrogen bomb, met Bob at some kind of conference out there at Los Alamos. And years later, Bob ended up giving him his resume. That's how he got his way into Area 51, was through Ed Teller. And so, according to Bob, he got his way in, but he never had any degrees or anything like that. He attended school, but he didn't get a degree. Or did you guys find anything that said that he actually got a degree?
No.
I didn't find anything about it. I know that at one point they tried to like erase the records or whatnot, but that was pretty much it.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't look into like what school he went to and where he graduated from. I have not researched that yet.
Got you. Well, he had apparently taken some classes at MIT and other courses. Now, one thing that isn't Bob Lazar related that could throw some credibility to his claims, because a lot of folks would be like, well, why would they get somebody who doesn't have a degree in MIT, who doesn't have that background in physics? And one of the guys that you can kind of look at is Ed Snowden. Snowden didn't have a college degree or anything like that going into the military, from my understanding, and they chose him. Mainly, also one reason being is because if he went rogue or if something were to happen, he could easily be disproven based on that. Now, Bob Lazar, kind of getting back to his story, from what I understand, he got employed. He went out to Area 51. He was doing jobs out there trying to figure out how to reverse engineer anti-gravity propulsion aircrafts that using technology that we have available here on Earth. And that during that time they were monitoring him, and they discovered his wife was having an affair, so they kind of removed him from the project. Didn't have him going out there as often. In fact, stopped having him go there, period. And then apparently, I guess he tried to do a routine pick up his birth certificate of some sort, and that was missing. So he became scared and then went to the news, and in fear of the military or the United States government coming after him, he wanted to disclose what he knew, so that way if something were to happen, and that would prove basically what he was saying. And so that's what he claims. He claims that the propulsion that the craft used some kind of anti-gravity waves, used some type of fuel, some kind of element 115, where it created it was a heavy element that would create a gravity wave, and then that would move the vehicle forward. And so, he has a lot of skeptics. A lot of people say the college thing. What did y'all find anything that maybe could disprove Bob Lazar? Jaime?
Not disprove, as a matter of fact. I mean, the more you listen to this guy, the more he makes it believable, if that's the word I can use. I mean, from the way he describes the vehicles he worked on, or the vehicle he worked on, and from seeing supposedly there was 8 more besides the one he was working on.
Correct. He claims there was 9 vehicles there.
And like it's crazy the amount of detail he has, like still remembers from the small time he was there, because he was only there like maybe 6-7 months.
Right. He said he wasn't there very long.
He wasn't there long.
Right. That he was supposed to keep his job there secret. So his wife became, I guess, suspicious of his what he was doing in the middle of the night. So began an affair with a pilot of some kind.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I found to be credible about Bob Lazar or interesting was the way he described the vehicle moving. He stated that if the vehicle can move in 2 ways, or it had basically 2 different modes. It had a like a slower mode where it had 3 gravity amplifiers underneath the craft, and it would move back and forth, and it would allow the vehicle to move back and forth during the space. And then the other way, for longer distance or faster travel, it would go belly up and face the direction that it wanted to go, and then haul butt, or actually the place he wanted to go would come towards you, is basically the way they described it. So it was kind of like following towards you. In the recent U.S. Congress, I guess, where they were trying to declassify certain UFO videos, there was one called the gimbal. Are you guys familiar with that video where the craft turned sideways during its flight and then moved away? I found that to be interesting.
That was a FLIR, right? FLIR work.
Right, it was a FLIR camera that caught it, and it caught it kind of turning midair. It was pretty interesting. Have y'all seen that video?
Yeah,
I saw it. I think he actually showed it to me like a year back or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. I think I said the Tic Tac a lot more than that one.
Yeah. The Tic Tac's pretty interesting. With the pilot, what's not on that video, or there was a Joe Rogan segment also on the Tic Tac where Colonel, what was his name? Do you guys remember his last name?
Faber, I think.
There you go, Faber. He actually witnessed the craft before that video. He's not actually a part of that video that took the video of the Tic Tac, but he was in the air that day, and he was flying. And what he also says that isn't shown on there was that there was more than one, and that they had been out there for days and apparently been flying for hours upon hours. So even if it was conventional technology, there's nothing that has enough gas or battery power to stay up like that. And that kind of, what do you think about that?
The way it moved in the video, there's no way anybody physically can be in it.
Right, because of they described it like a ping pong, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's no way. If they were in there, a human was in there, they'll be pretty much destroyed probably in there. There's no way.
And if it was a drone, do you think that it could stay out there?
No.
That long?
No, I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
Not that long. I mean, it would have to get recharged every once in a while, unless it's got solar panels on it. And recharge batteries automatic.
The drone itself, based on the image of it, didn't look like it had like any type of panels, or it looked like a Tic Tac. I know that like Colonel Favor, he said that it actually looked like one of those propane tanks, those white ones, like about that size that was out there. He also said that there was something coming from underneath the water, that it may have came from the water. I found that to be interesting. There's so much that we look up to the skies and stuff, but yet we don't know about our own oceans.
That's the scary part, man. That we can find out a lot about outer space, but yet we can't even go to the abyss of an ocean. You know what I mean? Because of the filter and whatnot. Mm-hmm. There has to be some stuff hiding out there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of those creatures that wash up. I mean, you've seen the videos and the pictures of them. They're like, holy crap.
They're thought to be extinct or whatnot, and then they show up. That's crazy.
For sure. I mean, exactly, dude. And then not even that. If there was some type of maybe potentially intelligent, you know, species down there that are way down there that could elude us, that could also lead for many questions too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back to Mr. Lazar. Um, you know, there was a document from Jeremy Corbell, a documentary that came out on Netflix called Bob Lazar, UFOs and Flying Saucers. And in that documentary, he had spoken to Jeremy about potentially, because there's, I guess he kind of hints, I guess is the word I would say, that he has in his possession some amount of the element 115. And during his during the filming of the documentary, the FBI raided him and talked to him about the 115. You know, I find that element to be curious because he kind of predicted that element before that element came out, and then later on it came to be true. And
Yep.
so, you know, he's had a lot of things that kind of validate his claims. But one of the things that, you know, some skeptics will say is that it was just a matter of time before element 115 was, you know, found. That, you know, eventually element 151 will be found. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or created. And so, but his theory is that if apparently that through a particle accelerator, that element is so dense that it creates, I guess, through whatever it is they do in a particle accelerator, creates enough power to create that gravity wave, which is another thing that I found to be interesting, because he's the one that stated that there was gravity waves when, at the time in the late 80s, gravity was thought to be you know, something else than a wave. You know, gravitron, I think, is what was the most popular theory at the time. And so, given this type of technology, it would allow for a craft to travel faster than the speed of light without having to, you know, go through getting destroyed, you know, traveling through the speed of light. And so that's insane. What do you think? Do you think that somebody came out here? Do you think that's something that's new? I know Bob Lazar said that, you know, he believes it's ancient, that it was a dig, an agricultural dig, and it was found, and it was possibly from a long time ago. What do y'all think about that? Do you think there's any truth to that? It's ancient aliens, maybe?
I don't know. I think that personally, I think aliens have probably been among us for the longest time. Personally, I think that's my opinion. But there's I'm pretty sure they're not telling us everything they're finding out. You know what I mean? All the archaeologists and whatnot.
Right.
I mean, it's part of the government, right?
Right.
Right now at all. So
yeah, that's true.
So I mean, I'm pretty sure there's been stuff like that found and not been spoken of.
Right.
And he said that they had archaeologists digging these things up. I'm guessing that's how they found the rest of those other 8 vehicles or UFOs and whatnot.
What about you, Billy? Do you think that that these machines could last that long and we can still fly them to this day?
Well, I think so, because the way he said the way he explained the material, you know, it's not from here. It you know, but I haven't looked up too much. You know, he said they dug it up. I don't know if they dug up or, because everybody says they crashed there when I was younger. You know what I mean? They would always say they crashed there, but if they crashed, it would have been into pieces. You know what I mean?
Right. He did mention that one of them had like a hole in the bottom of them. But as far as the crash, you'd be alluding to the Roswell crash in the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's interesting. You know, a lot of folks, I guess, kind of put or think that the Roswell crash might be where we got the alien bodies and the aliens and stuff, which would be interesting because Bob Lazar stated at one point that he thought he saw an alien at S4, and so that kind of contradicts a little bit, don't you think? that it's an ancient type of thing? If it's an ancient thing, why would there be one now there?
Yeah.
Um, that could be true, but I mean, we don't know if they're visiting us all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's true. He did
I
mention
mean, from where he was at to Area 51, it was what, like 60 miles or whatnot. That's not that big of a difference.
15.
But I mean, besides the time what was it, in the 40s when the Roswell incident happened?
Yeah, that happened outside of Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah. So like, I believe that these aliens, whatever you want to call them, these creatures or whatever, I think they've been visiting us for the longest time, and it's never. I mean, they come from light years away or whatnot, but I think they've been visiting us for a long time, and then the government knows about it, and it's all hush hush or whatnot. That's my wedding.
There was one guy who came out on the Joe Rogan show who was a CIA guy, and he kind of talked about that. He had heard that Bob Lazar was a dude that kind of just checked for radiation on badges at Area 51, and then I guess the question will come up, even if that wasn't the case, a lot of the times the question comes up is, how did he know when and where the aircraft was going up? And one question that I had about that was, do you think that him being in the area, if the Air Force was doing that on a timely manner, do you think maybe he kind of picked up on the schedule? Hey, they're coming out every Wednesdays. I'm seeing some weird stuff in the sky. What do y'all think about that?
I don't know, man. For what I understand, or what I think, is that the government usually doesn't have routines. That's one of the parts that gets to me. Like, for him to get, he said at one point he said he already knew the routine of it, and I don't. That's kind of a red flag for me, because the government, I don't think, will be in the routine of doing the same thing like every other week or whatnot. You know what I mean? So that's iffy about it. But I mean, like I said, like, other than him filming some of this stuff and showing his friends and whatnot, I mean, it's his word against, ours, I guess,
Right. What about his friends? What do you think about his friends? Does that maybe kind of drop some credibility? He is friends with John Lear, who was a big, UFO guy, back then, kind of talked a lot about UFOs. Does that maybe give you guys a little bit of questions? What about you, Blue? Do you know who John Lear is?
No, I don't.
No. What about you?
That hurt him more than nothing.
That hurt him. You see, because he knew John Lear before he went out to Area 51. And then, I found it interesting. So in doing the research, and I'd also had heard and seen this, Robert Bigelow, who's a huge billionaire guy, he also UFO guy. He owned, I think, Skinwalker Ranch at one point.
Yeah, he did.
He knew Bob back in the day as well. And I just always found it odd that, it's John Lear, who's a huge UFO guy. Then you have Bob Lazar, who is putting jet engines in Hondas. And then you have, Bigelow, who's also big into UFOs, who's, been huge into it. They're from the area. They live there. Is it possible that they got word of the secret base, maybe heard about some of the special crafts that were out there and tried to make something bigger than what it was? What do you think about that?
It's hard to say. I mean, even from the beginning, like how he got the job itself, you know what I mean, by getting the resumes out, and then the one getting to I can't remember his name, but the guy,
Ed Teller?
Yeah, the hydrogen, right? Hydrogen bomb.
Yeah, hydrogen bomb guy.
And that's how he got his way into that section, that part of the what's it called? The base.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's kind of weird, but it's even weirder when he knows two other guys are super into the UFO anomalies. It's kind of iffy. But the thing is, like the way he details, like he says all the details on about the aircrafts, what he did, and what other people, what happened to other people that were there and whatnot. And then you come to find out that some of the stuff that he said, like the element, what is it, 115? Is it 115, right? How later on it became a thing, and now he talked about how the way he would get in there and the way they had to, like, they used some sort of security with your hand. You have to put your hand. He described all that, so it made it pretty believable. Where did Danny go?
Said his power went out.
Ooh, I guess we're gonna have to drink until he comes back.
It says the feds got him.
What?
That's what he put on Snapchat. He said the feds got him.
There he is.
I'm back.
He's back.
But I'm gonna hit.
I think the friends he had helped hurt him more than helped him. His credibility, you know what I mean?
I do too. It definitely threw out a red flag when I saw that. Who he was hanging out with. It's hard to believe somebody when the people that are around him are not the most credible, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that Mr. Bigelow is not a credible person or anything like that, but George Knapp and John Lear, those two guys probably were the two guys that I thought maybe threw the biggest red flag, especially John Lear, given the fact that he was known to be huge into UFOs and talking about them, and had some outrageous theories and things. I believe he even stated at one point that he thought people lived on the sun. And so, some crazy stuff like that.
Stuff, no?
One thing, and I kind of remember where we were at before the feds try to take us down, was do you guys think that according to Bob Lazar, that some of these aircraft were architectural digs and could be here from a long time ago? There was one thing that I kind of saw that was UFO related that kind of touched on it, was Lou Elizondo. Are you guys familiar with him?
No.
Yeah. Lou Elizondo is a guy who came out on the To the Stars Academy with the Blink-182 guy, Tom DeLonge.
Okay.
Yeah, he was talking about disclosure and all these other things, right? And one thing that he was talking on a podcast was that if you had a civilization that was ancient, so to speak, or whatever, and they wanted to make future civilizations known about them, how would you do it? What would you leave behind? I mean, right now, if you were to go look at the Titanic, it's only been underwater for, I don't know, a little over 100 years. And in the next 100 years, it'll be completely gone. What could last the test of time? I mean, if it wasn't for us continuing to rebuild the pyramids, they would have been gone. And those are just a couple of thousand years. What could we do to make sure that whatever we build could last 1,000,000 years? And Lou Elizondo kind of hinted that maybe perhaps putting something on the moon. And so, being out there in the vacuum of space, there wouldn't be any oxidation and things of that nature.
No rust.
Erosion. Yeah, exactly. Erosion due to water or anything like that. You think maybe perhaps putting two and two together, that these planes that Bob Lazar maybe perhaps was working on was something from the past. What do y'all think on that? Ancient alien theory.
I would say it's not from Earth. I'll tell you that much, because any metal that's here has already started to fall apart. I mean, not the thing would be made out of gold. That's like the strongest metal I think that I see that doesn't.
Well, you go through Sumerian text, right? Now this is going like super old school and ancient alien, but they claim that the Anunnaki people or star people that came from the sky that needed gold for their own, I guess, home planet. I think they were from the planet Nibiru. Are y'all familiar with any of those guys or any of that story?
No,
The Sumerian story? No.
not
We'll look into that one another time. That one's a pretty cool one.
saying what would we leave behind to
Right.
let people know that we were there in the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what could they do? And do you think that, so if human beings have only been on this planet for about a quarter, 250,000 years is what it's estimated, the Homo sapiens, and look at what we've been able to accomplish in that time. You know, there's been 65 million years since the dinosaurs. Do you think there could be a civilization that could have more technology than even what we are at today that have been wiped out, that we have no trace evidence of?
I mean, it's hard to say, but if I was to leave something behind for people to know that, like, for someone to discover it, I mean, wouldn't you leave a part of your own race here?
Right,
Like,
like
evolved?
like maybe a DNA sample to come back.
Yeah,
That makes sense. A form of a Noah's Ark, so to speak.
yeah. And I mean, if you're talking about like if we're all perish or whatnot, not in like in an asteroid or nothing like that, because if that's the case, it will destroy all DNA or whatnot.
Right.
But like if we perish, just we die off, I mean, that would be the best thing to leave behind. I mean,
Well, I mean, an asteroid may not kill everything. I mean, if you think about panspermia, where planets are like DNA and microbial life get blasted into other, other planets. Like, for instance, we found rocks from Mars, in our northern caps and southern caps of the Antarctica and North Pole, where an asteroid has collided with Mars. You know, if something were to collide with the Earth and bacteria were to somehow make it to another planet, it could create some sort of new life out there that would start the evolutionary, time all over again. It'll start off in, single cell microorganisms and then evolve eventually into multi-celled organisms and so on and so on. And so that's possible. But according to Lazar, and going back to him, he claimed that the aliens, basically based on what the military gave him, they told him that the human race was basically some part of advanced evolutionary project from an alien species, so that way we can get to where we're at faster. You know what I'm saying? And so, and that these aliens visited Earth ever so often, and that they would be coming back in the year, or in 1623, however that is figured. Year one for us may not be year one for somebody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
one thing that I find interesting is that even with all these different civilizations throughout thousands of years, they all describe the same thing they see. Like, something similar to the same thing that other civilizations they don't know nothing about.
right.
They describe these things in detail that they see in the sky, and it's crazy to really like to know that different cultures or different civilizations around the world in different times are describing the same thing, and that's not just a coincidence, I believe.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the major things that people talk about, bringing back full circle, is a flood. Major different civilizations that are out there talk about a major flood and a catastrophe involving a flood, going all the way back to the potential mythology, potential truth that is the lost city of Atlantis, which was supposedly a higher technological civilization that was very, very high in technology that basically got flooded out.
Yeah.
And so,
see, the thing with him is that I don't get is he's supposedly a physicist, right? And he put that jet engine in the back of that Honda, right?
right.
And why hasn't he been able to build its own craft as a test, like as a model with all the knowledge that he got from where he was at.
That is an awesome question.
Like, because he even though he's not going to have the same matter, the same power source, with all the advances that we have today, there's some power source he can try to build something.
Well, the thing is, he claims to have a piece of element 115. He claims to also say that the element 115, in order to use it, you needed to have a particle accelerator to, I guess, collide it or whatever it does to create the power that you need.
A reactor, right?
Right. He has those. He has.
Well, see, I also do X-rays, and we kind of have that in a tube. Where you send the power to the tube to shoot it through the beam to get the light to shoot through your arm and see your bone. We have the science for it. I don't know how he can't figure it out.
I mean,
build something, even if it's like a 2-foot model, just to test out a theory.
That's true. That is very true.
With that jet engine in the back of that Honda, do you know how fast he was going, or he just put it back there and it was just a slow ass car with a jet engine?
It was the apparently
there was a lot of complaints of the noise.
It wasn't even VTEC, man.
Nah, it was running an old school OBD1. But
the thing is, even in the interview with Joe Rogan, he said that even though he was there for like a couple of months, for like 6 or 7 months, that they really didn't figure out anything. Like, they were so baffled around the technology. I mean, he said that not even the craft inside had right angles. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You can't find the right angle inside of a craft or of anything, around anything. You find it everywhere. So that's pretty crazy to listen to him say, "Oh, I worked on this vehicle that not from this planet, but yet we didn't figure out almost nothing."
Yeah, but I saw another clip that he said, "Well, I saw, a pilot get in it. They retrofitted it for him, and I saw it, go up in the air, and I saw it go back and forth."
Right.
Okay, so I guess he wasn't on the team that was working to figure out how to make that plane fly. You know what I mean? And that not the plane, the UFO fly. So that's where I kind of find his credibility. Like, well, if you were on that team, you would have that knowledge to be able to rebuild it, or at least build something close to it.
Right. Well, his defense was that everything was compartmentalized, where he only had the engine, and as far as like
certain parts of the
certain other parts were gone to other people, so that nobody had everything in total. But one thing that came out of that Jeremy Corbell interview with Joe Rogan was that he stated that in his video or in the movie Bob Lazar, Flying Saucers and whatnot, that there was a small clip where they were doing an experiment with the element 115, and basically supposedly in the experiment they were bending light. They were basically bending a light like a laser light going one direction and then just bending it, which is apparently impossible to do. And somehow they only have 10 seconds of the clip, and the rest of the film is lost and they can't find it. And it's a lot of little things like that are just like, come on now, like, all right.
You can't expect them not to lose stuff. I'm gonna say something that might get us kicked out. They lost to Hunter Biden that top. I don't know. That was like last month, man. So
that's true. If they want to lose something, they'll lose it.
They'll lose it. Yeah.
With that, it's just that though. I just found that there was some things that were kind of like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. If you were to think right now, as far as the technology that the government currently has that we aren't available or that we don't know about, how far in the future do you think that they are? They're about the military is about 30 years ahead of what we know they are. 40 years. What do you think? Because they're not going to tell us what they're
No, I
inventing.
think they have a lot of stuff that they're working on. You know, like they have to because they have to stay ahead of everybody else.
Right. So how far in the future do you think that their technology is compared to what we have access to? You think they're about what, like 20, 30, 40 years ahead of us?
I think we're ahead of ourselves, but not ahead of the Chinese.
Right. What I mean is, like, so if the government were to develop an anti-gravity propulsion system, they're not going to tell the world about it. They're going to want to keep it secret. It was like 50 years before the B-2 bomber was ever made public, right? You know, they had that stealth type of technology to...
But here's the thing. Since that B-2 bomber's been out, there's nothing out that's compared to it. They haven't been able to duplicate it that we know of.
Right. Yeah. And so here's my thing. If the B-2 bomber is about 50 years, right? The technology, you know, before they, or put it 40 years. This Bob Lazar situation and what happened to him happened in 1990, right? So roughly a little bit over 30 years ago, right? And so with that being said, what he described was borderline magic, where he said that things didn't have to be wired together for them to work, and there was no corners. It was like as if it was one mold. Today, that's 3D printing and Bluetooth. You know, back then they didn't know what that was. But if you're looking at it, we have that today. That's 30 years ago. You know, we've had Bluetooth capabilities since, you know, 2010 maybe.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, before that, we had what's it called, like what's it called, walkie talkies and whatnot. But that was already started in a certain range. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they run off of radio frequencies.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe because, you know, if you go and introduce that at the time of 1990, Bluetooth and 3D printing, and maybe not the 3D printer itself, but what it produced, people would think, man, you know, there's no edges, there's no corners, there's no, you know, it's just made out of one piece. It's magic. And so my thing is, how hard would it be to like just put all that crap out there for him to think that's what it is? So y'all never found anything in his story that changed?
No, he's always been the same. But there's things that do throw red flags, but not really. Like, didn't he get arrested also?
He got arrested for owning a brothel.
But like, was he convicted of that? I don't know if he was convicted of that. Like, was that true, or was that like maybe government?
It was true, apparently. Apparently, that was something that he was doing even when he was married with his wife. I had found something that stated that him and his wife had done it, and after his wife had passed away, or his first wife passed, which is confusing because outside of that one interview that I had looked into, and I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but he was going about Bob Lazar as if he knew him, and he brought up that brothel situation. But I think it had to do more with taxes because he lives in Nevada, and I think that those types of things are legal there, depending on certain things like taxes and whatnot. I think there's certain things you got to do. Excuse me. And so with that being said, I think that was that. The red flag that I remember hearing was there's two of them, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about as far as like the Bluetooth and the 3D printing was, and I believe it was Robert Bigelow who was talking about this. He said that Bob Lazar mentioned some type of book where the pages, he flipped them, and were holograms. That didn't make sense to me. You know, that sounds cool, but that sounds like an advanced feature of an old school book. You know, we have, you know, Kindles and things of that nature where we don't physically flip pages anymore. So for that to be like a page and then it was a like a hologram that showed them, you know, whatever the page was on. The other question is, what was it? What were the images of? I mean, if it's an alien world, it'd be different than what we're seeing now, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
You know, if it was a hologram image, it would be even more because you wouldn't see animals or people or whatever it would be. That's the space, the planet, the scenery, everything would be alien to us. So that kind of threw me off. But the other thing that really, I guess, questioned everybody was he had claimed at one point that he had seen an alien. Did y'all see that part?
Yeah, they saw. Well, I believe saw pictures of an alien.
I didn't see that part, but I know when he described the inside of the UFO or the vehicle. He said it was only like maybe 2.5, 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
So like it was built for someone small, for something small. I mean, but
Right.
I didn't hear nothing about him actually seeing I haven't seen it.
His description, and now that you bring that up, brings up an interesting thing for me. He's been very adamant about getting things in particular details correct. He talks about, like, when he goes on Joe Rogan, and I think Joe Rogan purposely tries to slip him up by saying that he was at, Area 51 instead of Area 51's S4. Yeah. And he goes, no, if you want to be correct, blah, blah, blah. Well, he goes into detail. He says that at one time, and at only one time, that he walked through the hangar bays and saw that that there was 9 crafts, that the hangar bays throughout the entire facility was open, and he was able to see 9 crafts, including the one that he had seen. One thing that he was adamant about that is he only seen it one time, and at only one time. However, he's also adamant that all 9 crafts were propelled by the same technology. How would he know that if he never entered those crafts, or it was, and everything was compartmentalized? And
here's one theory that came up to my head right now that I just remembered. You know how they finally released that they had those videos, like of the Tic Tac and the other incident? But I think they finally released it when everybody threatened to storm Area 151.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you try to storm it now, they probably moved everything that was there.
They also changed what was it before? It was UFO. Now it's what, UAP or something like that.
It was UAP, AEP, aerial threat phenomenon, ATP. They change it every so often
to make it sound less threatening or something. I don't know.
Well, if you listen to Dr. Greer, who is a big proponent of aliens and peace and yada yada yada, he's like not to sound disrespectful to him or anything, but he's like a hippie UFO guy, peace, love, and whatnot. And he says that the government is trying to implement more of a threat, that the aliens are a threat, that these, just so that they can fuel their wars and fuel their whatever the case may be. But I don't know about that. If they're that advanced than us, I don't think they would. Well, they supposedly, if the rumors are true, then they did create us to be slaves.
Yeah. But as far as the way I think is, like, I try to separate what his details and what he saw, and then the details about how he showed his friends. I try to separate them apart. And if you see or if you hear the way he details every single little thing, it's really, really, really hard not to believe him. You know what I mean? Because like even the smallest little thing, he tells you about it.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell he's been saying his story a lot. Like when he goes into like almost like a robot when he talks about certain parts of the thing. I remember there was one portion where they asked him, how do you turn on and turn off the reactor? And he goes into, well, the reactor could be turned on in 1 or 2 different ways. And the way he just kind of went into it was almost like a pitch.
It just flows.
Exactly. And it's, he's been doing it for such a long time. So why here? Why do you think that if aliens came, why the United States? Why here? Why not land somewhere else?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know if they've been somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, I think they've probably been to other places, but everybody said they've been to Egypt. They helped build the pyramids. Maybe they're just doing one section at a time. I don't know.
But like, do you think that maybe if Bob Lazar is saying is true that our government has alien technology and we've had alien technology for a while, do you think that, and we have 9 crafts, we have somehow got our hands on 9 of them that are completely different, according to Bob, in at least shape, but he states that the propulsion is the same. Do you think that anybody else might have one?
I'm sure. I'm pretty sure they. I'm pretty sure there's not. We're not the only one.
No, you
Yeah.
don't think so?
And,
But you don't think that maybe we would have seen some kind of flex by somebody saying, "Hey, you know what? We have this technology."
I don't know, man. People go missing or die all of a sudden for stuff like that. Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised I haven't taken them out, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, according to him, his plan worked. His goal was to be publicized, go out there, tell everybody, "Hey, this is who I am," so that he doesn't get, a victim of the 411 or or something else. You know what I'm saying?
Suicide.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that kind of caught my attention was when he got caught out there at Area 51 showing his homies the lights and stuff. They didn't arrest him. They brought him in. They questioned him. They let him go.
Yeah.
Don't you think they would have, I don't know, done a little bit more than that?
I mean, even if you go, supposedly, if you go past the gates of Area 51, they're allowed to shoot you down, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm pretty sure they're if he was showing his friends, or there would have been a lot more than just a little lecture and then letting him go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Has to be more. I mean, it's government stuff, man. The government does not play around. I'll tell you that.
I mean, with how strict they are, how do you think that he could have gotten away with at least a part of the Element 115? Now they only have 500 pounds of this, according to him. So there is it's not something that that at least at the time while he was working there, that we can reproduce. That it needed, well,
like, how do they know the weight? Like, is it a liquid? Is it? I haven't heard him say what it is. Like a powder form, like, and how is it stable? You know what I mean? Like, if it's that powerful, it has to be in something that would be, stable enough to hold it.
He says he has it in a little puck that looks like an ice puck, and that the amount that he has is just a small amount, that it doesn't take very much apparently of this fuel. Now what he claims is that he was given information that basically told him that the craft came from an alien species from the Zeta Reticuli solar system, which can only be seen from the southern hemisphere of our planet, and it's about 30-something light years away, and that it is part of a binary star system in which, due to the 2 suns that the planet goes through, which was the 3rd planet in that system, created heavier elements, which allowed those elements to be natural. He made it seem that these beings may not be so much more intelligent than us, but might be a product of having resources around them to them that would allow them to, I guess, grow exponentially faster than us technologically wise. Like, for instance, if we were water bound as a species, where we were like dolphins and we had to stay in the water, then we couldn't have created, like, it doesn't matter how smart we got, we wouldn't been able to create a way of building a craft using electricity to propel ourselves out of the water into air, out of the atmosphere, into space, into another planet. You get what I'm saying? No matter how smart you are, you have to be able to overcome your surrounding. There could be, advanced, species out there on a planet that is 3 times as large as Earth, and because of the mass of that planet, they don't have a propulsion system that can get them to leave the atmosphere because of gravity on that planet or whatnot. And so it's more than just the advanced portion or the potential for knowledge out of the species. They also have to be in a place that is favorable for them to reach that potential of technological advancement. And so, him saying that they're from there, they started off there, they may not be that much more intelligent than us, just got a little bit more of a head start. And so that's interesting. The other theory that's out there is that these crafts and or the aliens that are visiting us are us from the future. Have y'all heard about that? What do y'all think of that?
I've heard about that, but I mean, maybe it's possible now. I'm open to anything. I mean, I'm open to try and believe that, I guess, or not believe it. But I mean, I'm open to it. I'm open to the idea to think that it's us from 100 years from now, or whatnot.
Right. I mean, it's the Terminator thing, though. Like, let's just say it is us, right? They're future tourists, right? They want to see what the past was like.
Yeah.
How messed up is it that, hey, you know what? I want to go see what Roswell was like in 1940 something, and you're the craft that crashed, but they can't tell you anything,
Yeah.
They know it's you before you head out. Like, oh, here, it's time.
It has to happen, man, in order for everything to take place.
Right, exactly. But like in the Terminator movie, which is crazy because basically Terminator goes back in the past and they use his arm to create the technology to create him in the future. However, if he doesn't go in the past, then they don't get the technology to create him in the future to create time travel. And so it's the Terminator theory when it comes into that aspect. If something had to come from the future to crash in the past so that they can get technologically advanced, that would be insane. But if Lazar is correct in what he states that you can manipulate time and space, then with the element 115, then you would be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Bob Lazar said something about this, but I know they mentioned like cloaking. They had like this type of cloaking shield or whatever that made them not possible to see in the air or whatnot. I think that was what you were talking about. That it would bend light or whatnot.
Right. So with the gravity amplifier is basically what it would do, and even himself brought up some questions about it that made me go, He stated that the craft would bend space and light, and if you were able to do that, which was proven, like gravity can manipulate space and light. It was proven by Albert Einstein in his theory of relativity. Essentially, you can basically, when you look underneath of it, the way he described it was you would see above it. You would see the sky above the craft. So from below it and from above it, he stated that it was almost transparent. And then he said that he found it very odd that they were able to communicate with people inside the craft, given the fact that radio frequencies shouldn't be able to go into it, given how it was, up there, which made me question that as well. Like, I wonder how they're doing that.
Yeah, that's the one where Blue said that they actually had somebody, a pilot, actually pilot one of those things around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how they were communicating with each other.
Yeah, and so that communication portion of that is pretty odd. Like, and even he brought it up himself. I don't know if he caught himself in the conversation with Joe, or if that was something that he truly was thinking about for a while. But that would be odd. I do know that later in another podcast or interview or whatever, he had mentioned something about communication through gravity waves, which does kind of make sense, because that would be the only way you can communicate with somebody without having to go through the bounds of light travel. Like, for instance, if there was an advanced species on our nearest neighbor as far as star goes, which would be what is it, Zeta? No, not Zeta Reticuli. It's Proxima B, or Proxima Centaurus. That one's about 4 light years away. If there was intelligent, beings on there, at today's technology, if we sent the message, it would probably be about 8 years before we would get the message returned back to us that we could receive. You know what I mean? Because it'd take 4 years to get there, then 4 years for it to come back. And so if they're able to communicate by other means, that would be a little bit quicker. I mean, if they're able to travel that way, they should be able to communicate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it just makes things interesting. And the thing that makes me wonder is, if there is so much bending of time and space and all this other stuff, why aren't our satellites catching that? Or maybe they are, and you know what I mean, like SETI and all these other people. Why aren't they catching these ripples in gravity? Unless they're really far out. But that's one thing that we're not seeing.
Or not being told.
That's true. We may not be told. It could be happening all over the place, and we'll not be told. The government is tricky, man. They ain't gonna tell you everything. Even with the Roswell crash, the kid of the guy who went out there stated that his dad had told him, was it Jesse Marcel, had told him that the material that he was taking a picture with for the newspaper was not the material that was picked up at the crash site at Roswell.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting, man. There's this, they came out that it was a flying saucer. It came out it was beings from another planet, and then all of a sudden changed to a weather balloon.
I think the fact that they were covering up the Roswell incident from back then, and now if through the years, slowly but surely they've been letting stuff out slowly to the public. Like even what Hillary Clinton to mention it by name on a talk show, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's crazy. Like we're back in like 100 years ago. Would you hear about that? Like somebody that important at the time will come out and say something like that. It's crazy. So like I think the government what's going to happen is that the government's going to not just give us the whole thing all right away. I think they're going to just give us piece by piece. So when it turns out that they're here, we're not freaking out about it, man.
Right.
That's what.
Yeah. I mean, there's the one other theory that's out there that kind of brings down the parade of Bob Lazar, and that I've heard a little bit about and kind of thought of myself is, and back in the 80s, we were in a Cold War with Russia, or the Soviet Union, from what I understand. Wouldn't this be that flex that I mentioned earlier? Like, hey, if we were to, go to war with a different country, but we don't want them to know exactly what we have, why not, tell these folks or leak it out there that we have alien technology. That way, these other foreign countries don't mess with us. You don't think that's a possibility? The whole fake moon landing to beat the Cosmes type of thing.
Oh, the moon landing is a whole different story, man.
That's a whole hour conversation and longer.
Yeah,
for sure. Might be the next one, guys. So stay tuned. Which reminds me, everyone, please hit that like and subscribe.
Hit it.
Yeah.
And so,
but I don't think the government will do such. I don't think they will flex like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think they want to go through all that. Yeah, I mean, they're spies right now as it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and if they get a hold of what supposedly the government does have, I mean, they can make their own or whatnot, or try to replicate it, and then it's gonna be hell through war.
Right. But like, if you were to think like, hey, you know what? If I'm Russia, and I'm here chilling, right, and I'm over here thinking to myself, I'm gonna go to war with the United States, and then all of a sudden, I find out that the United States has potential technology that can wipe us out. That might lead me to, slow down a little bit. Let's think about this. Let's not rush into it. And,
yeah, so that was back then. They probably had that fear, but right now, they're talking about Putin, and he doesn't fear anything. He don't give two shits.
And that's we're gonna be coming to a close, guys. With that being said, final thoughts on this. Do you guys think Bob Lazar telling the truth, telling a lie? What do you think, Bob? Big Blue?
I think he's telling the truth, but it's because I believe some of the stories, but some of it's out there too.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Jimmers? What do you think?
I believe this beer is delicious. I think his story is good, man. His story is detailed. I believe what he says. If he would have stayed longer, I'm pretty sure he would have seen more stuff.
Yeah, he talks about that being one regret.
But like his details, and like I said, if you separate the details of what he worked on and then what his personal life or what he did out of it, I mean, if I was to look at his details about the vehicles and everything he explained, and the stuff that actually like came out true later on, it makes me believe more than not believing him. You know what I mean? I believe in him.
For sure. I'm also on the same bandwagon, guys. I think Mr. Lazar definitely did go through something. He believes what he went through and was told some certain things. Whether those things were true, whether those technologies that he was privileged to be working on was from an extraterrestrial race or whatnot is yet to be seen. But I do think that he believes in what happened to him and what he saw. And he sounds very regretful of, being a part of disclosing it and being his own demise as far as being kicked off the program. But I don't think I think it was going to be a matter of time. I wouldn't be surprised if the government purposely chose him to maybe do a soft disclosure because of the company he kept, and told him some certain things. But, only time will tell. Hopefully, the government will come out and inform everybody. But until then, all we have is just speculation. With that being said, guys, this is the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel J. That's Big Blue. We got Jeemers. Please subscribe, like, hit that notification button. We'll be coming out with shows probably maybe 2 to 3 times a month. And keep us on the lookout and share it with your friends and family. With that being said, guys, peace.
Now take care, man. Peace.
Later.